But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
And welcome to World Blockchain Roundtable. This is episode 108, and we're going to be talking about blockchain in healthcare. But to get things going first, as always, let's talk to our panel. How's it going, panel? Joining us first, as always, is Dave, aka Distant. How you doing today?
Hey, I feel like I'm in a sing-along song with all the syllables. That's great.
I love syllables. Usually I at least use one in every word. And we have this week, we have Oren joining us as well. How are you doing today, Oren?
Good. Hello, everybody. Happy to be here.
We have Greg from Rivet joining us.
Hey, guys.
Satoshi Sean and Litecoin Lisa joining us. How's everybody doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. And some business to take care of from last week. Little update. Each host last week is going to receive 77 lot. Each topic contributor from last week will receive 29 lot. And last week's theme was insurance for mobile generation, nominated by, is this right? Yeah. Insurance for the mobile generation, nominated by Am for Am. Or did we do AI?
I think last week was AI, yeah.
It's cool.
Which apparently snuck in and changed your copy there to sabotage the show.
We had AI nominated by Distant. I feel like it was his fault for some reason for this. It was probably mine. As a reminder, these tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes. This week, though, we're talking about blockchain in healthcare. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into our first question. No, we got to go through theme suggestions. All right.
Yeah, July themes, man.
So we have our July themes.
Need some.
Did you do that already? From last week?
So yeah, this week we have
Keep up.
We're going through the theme suggestions. Do we have any themes there? There we are. Anything that people, so far, blockchain and whistleblowers is crushing it. So that's probably going to happen. Is anybody excited about anything that happens to be here? Cryptocurrency wallets, digital assets.
That's current. Yeah, there's some interesting, like Apple removing a self-custody or a non-custodial wallet from the App Store, stuff like that. So yeah, I can see why that question would be in there, that theme.
Yep, for sure.
So, yeah, if you've got a theme that you want us to talk about, go in there, type in theme, colon, and then let us know what's up. Yeah, so should be exciting month. Next month, yes, because those are the themes for July. But today we are talking about healthcare, blockchain and healthcare.
That was July, right? So that's next month.
Yeah, that's what I said.
All
Those
right.
are for July, but today we're talking about blockchain and healthcare, Dave. Also, I'm working from my laptop today. I'm currently in Italy, so bear with me if I mess up.
Show off.
Yeah, I'm doing nothing. It's for my wife has a work trip, and I get to tag along. Great. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first question we have here. Jump right into it. This one.
That's a fun one right off the bat.
You what?
Oh, this one's fun right away.
Yeah, this one's fun. What are the panel's initial thoughts on the Hinman emails released this week against the wishes of the SEC And/or what are your thoughts on the most recent actions of the SEC against Coinbase and Binance? Reminder that questions about blockchain outside the weekly topic are allowed. So this question's okay. If you can find a way to tie it in to blockchain and healthcare, specifically healthcare, you get bonus points. And at the end, you get a prize. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be worth it. Oren, since you're at the top of my list, do you want to hit this question first?
A pretty loaded question. I think that, the US needs to provide some sort of clarity on what is a security and what isn't, and who can govern these things. I think there's a lot of confusion. I think we've had a lot of different messaging from different parties, and I think that hopefully from the end of these cases, we can have some clarity around that. And, I minted the Coinbase crypto NFT for their case, and I guess we'll see what happens, right?
Shields up, man.
Dave, you want to take this one next?
Well, the questions, about initial thoughts. So it's on the surface. I haven't thoroughly read through more than has been highlighted by others, basically. In other words, I haven't done my own due diligence. But from what I've seen that others have kind of snipped and put out there, it seems like a lot of the concerns that people have had about bias and about uneven application or even arbitrary application of unknown rule sets, that there's something to that, because even in the emails back and forth between Hinman and some of the legal staff, but also like just specific people in the cryptocurrency industry, the blockchain chain industry, that they were leaning on to say, hey, what should we say? Or that kind of thing. Talking about Untitled Chapter, the claim is that there has been some bias in favor of Ethereum, while others that are more decentralized than Ethereum have been targeted in some sort of scheme to, promote one or the other, to pick winners and losers. And I can see that being an issue that the SEC didn't want to disclose. So that makes sense, because there's some stuff in there that seems pretty not fair. So initially it seems like, I guess my opinion is that I'm glad they're out, because I don't think that a regulatory body should keep things like that hidden. Their thought processes and their reasoning for arriving at certain decisions should be publicly accessible. So I'm glad they're out there, and I hope that it burns the agency down.
Love those thoughts. Great thoughts. Lisa, any thoughts on the Hinman emails, or just emails in general?
Tons of thoughts on the Hinman emails, and you can put this in the category of mental illness. There's your tie back to health. But the biggest issue with all of this is that it is a regulatory agency. It is not a lawmaking agency. Congress is not doing their job. That's where the law was supposed to happen. And these cronies that get in and they don't want to do their job because they don't want to be held accountable. They want to keep their seat in Congress and keep getting reelected. So they want to be able to say, oh, I didn't vote for that, or I did vote for that, or I didn't, I wasn't part of making that law. They don't want to be held accountable. And there is a REINS Act that is being put through right now. Hopefully that does pass, which will bring Congress to task and make them accountable for these laws that they're allowing these unelected officials to create on behalf of, which then are weaponized against we the people. But the Hinman thing is they don't make the laws. They're bringing up these emails. Yeah, it's great that Hinman had an opinion about Bitcoin. I think it's really shitty, and it's very obvious that they were colluding with and dragging Ethereum along with it. I think it's really interesting that nobody's mentioning that he also said Bitcoin and Litecoin. They're all just forgetting that and not bringing that up, but whatever.
There's a reason for that.
What?
There's a reason for that.
Well, always. So that, the same people, look at who's involved in that. It might be some of the same names. involved with the Copa stuff, might be some of the same names involved with the Coinbase stuff. I don't know. There's some of the same players involved with some of these same things. And, I think there's some really intelligent people in this space that might be able to put 2 and 2 together, and be very careful, when they tell you, that they're your friend and come along with this, because not all of these projects are as benevolent as they seem. So watch out.
Sean, what are your thoughts on the Hinman articles and the emails and things like that?
Like Dave said, my initial thoughts are BS. Came to a huge realization this week about stuff that's been going on for months. For me personally, because I've been a felon, huge felon for 2 weeks. But yesterday, magically, I'm not a felon anymore. Because first off, the emails are not a smoking gun. Ripple like close to 10% because they're supposed to be this huge smoking gun. They're not a smoking gun. They are a gun. They like prove, he's a dick. They prove that that he was a bad leader of the SEC and kind of incompetent. But here's the thing: reading this stuff and everything really connected with the SEC except for Crypto Mom. Most of these people, it's like watching like your great grandpa who's lived in the woods and doesn't own a computer, owns a flip phone, argue with his neighbor about AI. They literally have no concept. So to them, it's like all crypto is the same. And it's all cronyism is like, hey, Ethereum will help you get rid of this Litecoin thing. It's all your competition. And so many cryptos are completely a utility for a certain thing, and they're so separated by other stuff. Some are used for peer-to-peer, some are used for gaming ecosystems. There's such a vast cornucopia of differences between certain cryptos. I don't think anyone up there gets it. They think they're all making widgets. These are all widget companies. This Ethereum widget company. We're gonna, and they're obviously. He was way too connected to I forgot Vitalik's name for a second. But
I think so. I think it was Money Skeleton is the name I heard. Yeah.
Like Lisa said, they're not supposed to pass laws. They're only supposed to interpret them and blah, blah, blah. All that's true. But, Congress still, they're not doing their job. You can say that. Or I think that it's all theater. We all know it's all theater. We'll say that first. But I think all of these people have just gotten very comfortable in their roles as actors. It's all a show, but at any damn time, they can just have a vote and get rid of it. They can have a vote and take control. They can have a vote and fix it. For 3 months, they've been talking about pistol braces because the ATS said anyone that has a pistol brace, which was designed for disabled people to help them hold the gun, they doesn't do anything, but anyone that had one is going to be a felon. And that had 3 months to get rid of them, to register all your stuff with the ATF, which goes against everything with the Second Amendment, or destroy it. That went into effect on June 1st. They had hearings after hearings. They were televised. They argued. There was, people from the South, and they're standing up, and you're a terrible person, the ATF, and the ATF's like, yeah, we can do what we want. All a show, all BS. Like 2 days ago, they're like, hey, let's just have a vote. Oh, we're getting rid of that law. You can't do the pistol brace thing. Why didn't they do that 2 months ago? All of Congress is like, hey, this is wrong. You can't do this, ATF.
They need to push money around. Yeah.
Let's talk about it on TV for months. Let's get the people scared. Let's make them a felon for a week or two if they got the balls to not get rid of it or sign or register them, and then we'll go ahead and just we'll do it. It seems to be a pattern of what the government's doing. The power is still with the same people. They just want to do this big show before they do anything, or if they do anything. I think that's probably what's going to happen here, or the SEC is just going to put out some kind of compromise. If enough stuff gets exposed, if there is a risk where they could be shut down or even looked into. But I think it's all just a lot of show. I think the emails are not good. I think they show a lot more incompetence than they do super nefarious acts. But there is, it's obvious that there's some chicanery going on, and it did expose some of that.
So, may I jump in?
Yeah, it's exposed to people that kind of didn't already know.
Yeah, so only if you talk some more about pistol braces. I think that's really what you need to hear about.
Do we have the morality hour clip or the morality clip? Yeah. The show before I start talking. John, you're muted.
So I wish I did. I don't. It's on.
Okay.
It's on my desktop, not my laptop.
Well, so I'm going to take a different tack from everybody here and say something a little different. If you read these emails, they're damning in a way that people are maybe not keen to right out of the gate because it's kind of in the subtext. This is so the one I'm looking at, and look at the headline one. Bill Hinman, right, was going to give this speech, and he's bantering about his different divisions in the office about whether or not it's appropriately phrased, and they're talking specifically about whether or not ETH is a security. Brett Redfearn, which was, he was one of the directors of another one of the subgroups within SEC, says, "Hey, if you want to make it a certain statement that's affirmative about ETH not being a security, the language should be stronger. But if you want to keep the ambiguity, like we did with Bitcoin, you should tone this down and make it like that." Blah blah blah. Back and forth they go through this whole chain of emails. And you get the SEC exposing their internal monologue about using uncertainty in the marketplace as a weapon against crypto to keep it from taking off, to keep it from accelerating too much. This is something that they essentially claim that they don't do by implication when Gary Gensler stands before Congress and says something like, "Oh, no, I think there's plenty of certainty." No, you're weaponizing certainty literally in your back.
They really are playing stupid, aren't they, Greg?
It's and this exposes it in a way that, like, 3 of the people on this chain were from the enforcement division talking to the guy who's going to give a speech on it from Corp Dev, right? Like, this is cross-agency collusion to keep obscurity at what they consider an appropriate level, right? How does this reconcile with what the SEC is saying about how there is no uncertainty?
Well, that's what I think Sean was illustrating with the gun brace thing, was that it's all a song and dance, and if you look at what people are doing, it doesn't match what they're saying, and people aren't generally, and they know this, people aren't generally going to take the time to do really the amount of firsthand research that includes something more than reading Twitter on the toilet or something like that to really understand what's happening versus what's being said. Right. And if you do that, though, you can take the time to watch hours upon hours of Gary Gensler teaching blockchain at MIT to get an idea of his understanding of the technology back then, before he was a regulator. Now, he misses a lot of important points. I think he's teaching it to a specific goal, a lot of financial stuff specifically. But it is telling to see the regression of his perception of what blockchain and cryptocurrency is when he moved from professor at MIT teaching blockchain to now being the person who's responsible for applying the law in a way that is, he just like Sean was saying, he acts like somebody who talks to his neighbors about this newfangled crypto stuff and doesn't get it, when that's partially true, but it's also bullshit.
Right, but because deep down you can tell, like, if you watch him for long enough, you listen for long enough, what he really thinks is this is just Kickstarter with a techie gleam on it, right? Like, this is just us needing to shut down more crowdfunding. And that's how he thinks about it, right? Like, they need to go after it the same way they shut down Kickstarter. And he doesn't believe that utility tokens are a thing. And he doesn't think decentralization, especially
that's the picture being painted.
Allowed, right? right?
That's the convincing argument being sold to people who will believe that.
Yeah.
Right.
You doesn't like the fangs in it, and he wants to tear them out before he lets people use it.
And whenever you see like people that LARP as Bitcoiners on social media praising things that the SEC is doing because it's going to make their bags more valuable, because it's going to hurt the competition, it's telling how much of the entire fucking sphere of conversation around this is bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's all just kind of like a song and dance about jockeying for position in a market that they think is going to be winner take all.
LARPing is a Bitcoin. That's good. That's awesome.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So before we move on to the next thing, I lied. I did do some research on these emails, so I thought I would share it with everybody. So yeah, I made a little presentation for it. So yeah, this is like, basically like the big part of it at the beginning. But that's not important, right? The next, hey, look, that's
here's you thinking about the emails.
This is all right. I don't know how this slipped in there. This is the Nazgul, not Nazgul, the Nigiri. These are like some towers and circular things. It's cool.
That's the sushi thing, right? Nigiri?
Yeah,
it's kind of like it, but different. This is
a different the Tower of Amun-Sul there for a second.
That's what I thought it was too. Oh yeah. So this is me again. Totally thought that I put in the I don't know where the emails went. I lost the emails. I'm so sorry.
You and Hillary.
Yeah, I thought I had them. I guess I don't have them. I'm so sorry, everybody. But that's it. We'll go to the next question.
We can't get more current events than these.
I was going to say that's what. Speaking of tying all that together, so like Gensler is being left holding the bag with all this, but we're talking about Hinman's emails, and actually Jay Clayton was in power when all this he was the one attacking all these crypto projects. He actually filed the day that he walked out the door and tapped, and Gensler was left holding the bag. He's the one that filed the charges on XRP. All this kind of stuff was Clayton. But it's interesting to me, why is Gensler left holding the bag with all this stuff and being the bad guy? Well, Gensler was the treasurer who wrote the checks on the case against the fake dossier against Trump for Hillary.
Oh, right. That's right. He was the campaign finance manager or something. Is that right? Or
something like that.
He managed the money. Yeah.
The checks. Yeah.
You're missing part of history. Had Trump been reelected, it would have been Pierce who was elected chair, right? Because she was standing in for Clayton as an interim chair while because he stepped down a little, or he said he was going to step down.
Right. That's right. We were all hoping for that.
Yeah. So you think it's directly in Pierce? You think it's directly related to controlling the money?
I think Gensler was under somebody's thumb, frankly. He was already under MF Global's cloud from when he was and his sort of collusion with his old mentor from the Goldman Sachs days, who is now a senator, right? What is his name? Corsi or whatever. Right, that was his buddy, his dad's buddy, and they've been friends forever. Gary Gensler did some shady shit, including claiming he didn't know how to use a BlackBerry to send an email on the company email, right? Back then, and he sort of left the CFTC in disgrace. So somebody brought him back in, probably because they knew that he was already dirty, and this was just back in public policy. Tit for tat. He is now somebody's toy soldier, I think, personally.
See, I think he's going to be left holding the bag, and he's going to take the fall for all this. And I think that's his penance. Because I think he got forgiven or pardoned from, all the stuff with Hillary. And then now he's going to be left. I think this is all going to fall, and he's going to be left holding the bag for it. But that's my personal opinion.
I think we're getting the guy who slaughtered all the people in the church and the Patriot.
We're getting this rare glimpse.
You got to give me an out, right? That's Gensler.
So we have
He's
this
already
rare
defined
window
himself.
into what a backroom deal looks like now. And it's basically the question is now, okay, here, yep, it's going on, it's happening. And so it sounds like the question is why and what are the incentives and, why are these people doing this?
Well, there's
Is
only
it
been
because Gary's supposed to be a fall guy? Is it because Gary was picked by people that want the money to be controlled by the bankers? Is it because there's obviously, so, if you assume money is broken the way that it exists today, there's difference of opinion on how to fix it. Some people think that decentralization and bringing money back to what it used to be is a good idea. Some people think that, if we just controlled all ourselves, at least we'll be okay. So let's just do that. You think that's the war? You think that's the underlying battle there?
There's always been talk that Trump had a plan to break the Fed and to bring the U.S. dollar back into the U.S. Treasury Department and back it by our reserves. Whether that was our oil independence and that's why we were drilling so much back then. I mean, nobody knows, and it's not 100%, But there's, most people in that camp, they're really, really adamant that was where he was going with it. This would have been a huge tool, and if that was the plan, to have Pierce there and to have just that whole echelon out of the money system.
Well, all I know is that I like money, and somebody needs to give me more of it. Let's go on to the next question here real quick. This one's on healthcare. The one above that, I believe. I know Dragon.
Orrin had something to say. I think Orrin had something to say in the last one.
Yeah, Orrin, what do you think about the prospect of giving disabled people access to gun slings and pistol braces? What do you think about, or maybe not that, just whatever you were going to say. Let's hear it.
I was not necessarily going to say anything.
Okay. You were scratching your nose, and then somebody was like, "Oh, that's a signal. Let's hear Orrin."
Yeah.
So now you're here though, and you are unmuted, so you got to say words, my friend.
It's cool. It's cool. We can go on to the next question.
Thank
it looked
you.
like you were right. We can go on to the next question. Okay, I had it in a different order. Somebody must have upvoted it. Cool. I'll read the whole thing, but I'd love to try to keep this just on the healthcare part and the privacy part on this as well. Republicans are currently waging a holy war on privacy and bodily autonomy by outlawing women's healthcare, throwing women in jail for seeking abortions, banning gender affirmation care for transhumans, and refusing to expand Medicaid in Republican-led states in spite of touting the importance of mental health after every mass shooting. North Carolina Republicans proposed a law that would enact the death penalty for women who try to get an illegal abortion. Idaho has made it illegal for women to leave the state to get an abortion. The activist Supreme Court has made it clear that it would roll back gay marriage, interracial marriage, and all the progress democracy has made over the last 50 years if given the opportunity. My concern for blockchain in healthcare is that it is public and unreliable. Privacy and security for our government has become more important now than ever before. Here's the question. I'd love to stay on the question. Would there be a way to use blockchains to ensure that the government or whoever else, extremists, that can't access our medical records in order to use them against us? So is there, I guess with blockchain, is there a way to ensure that our medical records are going to stay private and we're not just going to 23andMe us into a felony or something like that?
Not really. No.
Okay.
You say the tech stuff and this is great and this and that, but there's people involved. So all you need is a crooked nurse or a crooked doctor or a CIA agent posing as a crooked doctor. And that's it. Once they have access to it once, then it's open. And you can encrypt it and keep it private and no one can access it except for the right people. But if you get a fake right person in there, it's the government, and if Joe's here, he'd be like, if they want it, they're eventually going to get it.
Until it's unencrypted. Yeah.
It's if you're the president of the United States, eventually they'll put a bullet in your head in Dallas, or they'll,
There are extremes, and there's always ways to break shit, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't make it more difficult to be abused. Yeah. And what I like about the question is
it's keeping it from the government, not keeping it from hackers, not keeping
this is specifically technology designed. The the emphasis on making it government proof was there from the very beginning. If anything can do it, it is this.
But here, who regulates it? Who regulates that whole industry? Who's the biggest watchdog and all that? Whose finger is in that pie the most? It's the government.
Whether it'll be adopted is a different question, though. You know, if you can apply it in a way that resists cryptography works.
Yeah.
At the moment, cryptography works. If you're worried about like a nurse stealing something because they have access at one time, design a system that rolls keys every time it's accessed. There's ways around that. But I think the important part of the question here is the sort of reading between the lines a little bit. There's hesitancy about blockchain and healthcare because of a perception of public information, right? It's public and unalterable. That's not strictly true, though. It isn't. Every application isn't public, right? Bitcoin is public.
Right.
The things that you put on Bitcoin are public. It's transparent. That's the way. That's part of the strength and part of the weakness, and it's part of the reason that other solutions that are not Bitcoin exist in the first place, because there's different ways to do it depending on what your application is. And if it's in a healthcare setting, I would disagree with Sean on that. I think that it's able to be implemented in a way that absolutely only gives access to who either is given the keys to it or steals the keys to it. And if you can at least reduce the attack surface, you're improving it, even if you're not perfecting it.
The who is the weak link. All you have to do is have the CIA put 1,000 doctors on their payroll, and every time they get all the access,
you're exactly right. The whole game theory behind the security of blockchain is that it makes it very fucking difficult to attack it. Right now, it's easy. Right now, it's online, and anybody with sufficient access can log in and check it out. Right? They don't, because they don't want to get sued. But that's all just like somebody saying not to do it and deciding not to do it.
The whole point of blockchain is that, hey, you have decentralization. You have to have decentralization because no government can go to the CEO of Bitcoin and put a gun to his head. No nefarious group can go and do this to this, because there is no person. What I'm saying is that if you're dealing with people and you're dealing with the government, honestly, there's no way you can ever trust that your stuff is 100% protected.
As a custodian, right, Sean? Like, that's what you're saying is if they have the records as the custodian, then there's going to be a way to get it. It's sort of like with the whole key escrow thing with the Clipper chip back in the 90s, right? The idea was only the police have this key, and therefore only authorized searches can happen, even though the rest of it will still be encrypted. It's not really true, right? Because the more people that have the key, the more likelihood it's going to get leaked. The fewer people that have the key, the less useful it is, right? You can't even tell if somebody's encrypted it again underneath that. There's a whole lot of things that break that kind of idea. Same with health records, right? Like, if you really want to have the thing that you want, like, three things. Bodily autonomy is secured by the fact that, for example, the day after the Roe v. Wade decision, you could go on any one of the dark markets and for some Monero, get yourself, a couple doses of RU-486 for less than $100, right? You had to pay with a privacy coin and have it illicitly shipped to you, right? So you can still get those services even if somebody's going to stop you. Point number two, you can't keep the government from breaking in unless you decide to re-architect the system around self-custody of health records and something more like direct primary care, where like you're the only person paying them, so they can't withhold money from the doctor to make them do what they want, right? It needs to be more like kind of counterintuitive to the left perspective and be really more private and personal and individualized. If you really want to change it to make it so that they can't abuse it. And then I would say the third thing is it's more than just blockchains. They're a tool, right? we've got to fix society as well and how we use those tools, right? Like, yeah, you can commit some hash to the blockchain from a private data repository that keeps your information verifiable but secret. But if the system itself is designed so that you have to walk into a room full of cameras looking over your shoulder when you show them your medical records, even if it's somebody you need to show it, right? Like, that system's already broken. It's going to be in an NSA database, and then it's all over. So it requires some re-architecting around individual privacy and respect for the individual in a way that may come as a weird place to find oneself from the left, because it's not been their typical stance, right? But what is it, Dave, that you say all the time about the leftist and the anarchist and the right?
Oh, yeah, the decentralized infrastructure being the thing that people can agree on generally, but this is where the main point I was trying to make, and I still want to make, is that trying to design something where it's impossible to cheat it, I think, is a losing battle, and that's not what we should be doing. Instead, we should design it where it's extremely expensive and risky to cheat it. And so that bad doctor theory, and I am mentioned it in the chat too, the bad doctor attack. Yeah, that can happen. And I think that you should allow that to be an attack vector, but make that attack vector extremely risky and expensive. For example, accessing it, the doctor should need to be basically outed as having accessed it every time they access it. So if they leak the information, you at least know where it came from, and they can lose their fucking license. Right now, you don't have that sort of accountability in the system.
Also, that usually doesn't, and also in reality, that usually doesn't happen. The people who could get in trouble when they're at that level kind of insulate themselves. That's why corruption is allowed to flourish, because the penalty for corruption is so minimal, or it doesn't happen. The CIA or whoever gets exposed for this terrible thing they did, and no one ever goes to jail. Nothing ever changes. And so, there's no incentive for it to stop. That's why I think, like, we should make corruption laws huge. Like, if you, even on a city level, if you steal something or you commit a corruption above a certain dollar limit, you should be hung, executed 100%. It's not like something you can accidentally do. We really need, I think, to make political corruption or corruption, when you say it, just you get that gross feeling, like if you say, some other crimes against children or other things like great.
The only way to stop corruption, though, is to not have human beings in charge of administrating regulations.
I think it's more like what Dave said. You have to make it much more risky. There's a million times that, like, you've been in the heat of the moment, you would have punched someone in the face. But it's like, what's going to happen, and you're intelligent enough to hold back and calm down. But if there was
the Cobra Effect's a pretty cruel bastard, right?
If there's no consequences, I'd have punched a lot more people in the face over my life.
Well, let's
accountability matters.
Yeah. Lisa, you wanna jump in here, Oren? Let's make sure we hear from the whole panel and not just 3 people.
Yeah, the question was talking about blockchain and talking about, our healthcare society. I had 2 medically fragile kiddos. One of them passed away. I have another one that still will need a heart transplant. And so this is near and dear to my heart. I ran and grabbed a book that I used to carry around for my daughter, Mia. She passed when she was 7. And she had a heart transplant at 3 months and then passed away at 7 years old. And we had lots and lots and lots of emergency room visits. And so it was very difficult when we're in an emergency situation to get all the information quickly to the people. And it was confidential information. There's HIPAA laws and all that. And we seem to have forgotten that during the Great Infection. But they're trying to get that information, confidential information, quickly to someone. There is a great need for blockchain and having that security, and NFTs would be a great way to do that, an efficient way to do that. There is a way to have your encrypted information on an open blockchain. I've talked with multiple people about this. As I first got into blockchain, I was like, oh, solution. Okay, let's do this, and then the first thing was, well, it's open and it's public. And then we came into things about, well, what happens when that person is, maybe somebody is passed out, well, they could have a medical ID bracelet on them with a QR code on it with the keys, or an emergency. We came up with so many different solutions, and I think that will eventually, there is such a use case for this, and we will come up with the solutions. And I love Dave's idea about having accountability for, the human condition is there, and people, there's always going to be good and bad, but there should be severe accountability when people's privacy is violated. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the whole thing.
Also, I want to throw in there that America is very different than most other countries. With the I forget what country it was. I think it was Poland, maybe in Russia. It was, but there's a lot of countries that all you do is walk into the hospital, and they can do like a thumb scan or whatever. All your medical records are just open, everything from everywhere. I think even with the EU, they get like cross-chain stuff that they can pull from. If you go to different countries, you can pull your stuff from your own country. So it is very different in other places. But also, I think they have much stricter, consequences if you violate that privacy.
Lisa, can you just a little bit more about the reason that you had to carry that book around? Like you mentioned it, but like the burden being on you as the patient or as the family to have to do that in the first place is an area that I think that there's an important application here.
Well, so like for Mia, she had multiple health issues. And she was on so many different medications. She had significant surgical history. So because she had a heart transplant at 3 months old, and she was 7.5 when she passed. And so as we went in, they were like, okay, well, we need her med history. We need to know if she was allergic to anything. We need to know all her surgeries. Well, my gosh, this kid had, I don't even know how many heart caths. Well, I do know how many. I can tell you how many heart caths she had. And so I would have to go through all of that, fill out all that information every single time, whether it was an emergency room visit, whether we got transferred to a new doctor, whether we were seeing someone. And so, and the different, they all live in, these doctors live in towers. Like the cardiologist was in this silo, the GI doctor was in this silo, the cancer doctor was in this silo, and they do not communicate with each other or share information.
So it's hierarchically stovepiped, like precisely down one chain of doctor.
Very much so. And I was educating the cancer doctor about her heart condition and her anti-rejection. They knew about the anti-rejection meds, caused this kind of cancer, and that, we would be watching for the EBV to spike and all this kind of stuff. But they didn't understand, like, well, that lowers her immune system. And so we couldn't be on this other stuff. And then, well, we have to be on these blood thinner things because of the other, because of her blood vessels, because of the heart condition stuff. Anyway, it was just, as the parent, you're constantly cross-educating, and you're backing it up with documentation, and you need the dates of everything, and you need to know, did we try this med in the past, and what happened? Oh yeah, that didn't work, or this did work, or we had a reaction to that, or and so it's a lot on a parent and the caregiver, whoever the caregiver is, and especially when you have multiple family members that you're taking care of. And I think as we're going through this, whether you're a parent taking care of a child, or there's a lot of spouses taking care of their family, their significant others, or kids now taking care of their elderly parents. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, where the family members are taking care of other people, and we need that, the history, and we need a clear history.
So Lisa, what would you like, if I were to put this perspective, right? Like I think a blockchain system that was sort of like, your family history chain that that mom has administrative rights over, where like you can say, I give this caregiver permission to not just see these records, but to transmit them to everybody that's needed for the visit all at once, because you can associate them all these different stovepipes into a bundle. You don't even have to fix that system. You can just automate around it if you have something like blockchain.
Yeah, and give different permissions. Like maybe I would want to give permissions for med allergies, but they don't need to know all the surgeries, or vice versa. You should be able to everything should be an opt-in, as far as
couldn't it?
Permission. Yeah.
That could save some lives.
Sure.
I mean, even if they just tracked, like we give this medication earlier today type of stuff on it.
Right.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I don't think
it's something I'm really passionate about. So I was really excited when I saw the subject for today. And I think there's a lot of great solutions. I think this will help a lot of people.
Thank you for sharing, Lisa. It's really insightful, and hearing that like perspective from somebody who's actually gone through it and actually had to deal with these things. Oren, your turn.
Was just going to say that like America has kind of built its values on being the land of the free, with money, body, and voice, right? And I think we're at this pivotal point culturally and technologically where things like tech and AI are putting us like ahead of the government, sort of, in terms of like being able to catch us. And I think we're trying to find that balance between user empowerment and like government regulation. And so it's like, even if we did create a healthcare product that doesn't share our information, like, would it be banned, right? Like, would it even be allowed, right? And so I think that like, that's probably the reason why healthcare is a bit fractured today. And would we replicate that if and when we did adopt these Web3 tools, and would they be adopted, and are they legal or not? So I think it's just an interesting space in general, right? And understanding that.
Ross Ulbricht's serving 2 life sentences back to back for creating the prototype healthcare product that didn't have any privacy information sharing, right?
Or Tornado Cash, right?
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we've seen the willingness to ban technologies, not the behavior associated with them, but the technologies themselves, which to me is not like, you can commit crimes with AT&T as well. So,
right. Okay.
Well, you won't be saying that when our AI overlords take over, so watch out. We want to move on to the next question here?
Sure, yeah, let's bring it up. All right.
This question comes from, which one are we doing?
From Kratos, God of Boy.
There we go. This is from Kratos, God of Boy. Love that name. I know Dragon Chain specializations in this area as well with HIPAA compliance. But here's the question. What are some successful examples of blockchain implementations in healthcare, and how have these improved data and interoperability and information sharing between healthcare organizations? I like to make up words whenever I can.
I like hearing how many people can correct you all at once. That was amazing.
It's amazing how many other people knew the right thing instantly, and I just was like, I'm gonna sound this one out. My Italian is getting in the way. We mentioned one a second ago about, I guess, like somebody who created something and then it got them in trouble. But are there any examples of, I guess, blockchain or even like some kind of advancements in technology that's actually helping out in healthcare? Greg, it sounds like you have something.
Yeah. So in Mexico, we actually had this guy on last time we talked about something similar to this, Everardo from Prescripto. I don't know if you guys remember him. It is a solution for the Mexican healthcare system with respect to keeping track of prescription records and making sure that the prescription makes it securely from doctor to the prescribing doctor to the pharmacy, to the dispensary, to the wherever it needs to go, and then also giving them reliable stats on how it happens, and how they can get their handle on what is now currently a fairly unregulated pharmaceutical industry, but without sacrificing the privacy elements. It's actually, last time I heard, was running on Ethereum Classic, and they've got doctors and prescribers and pharmacists and patients using it already, and it's it not only helps to make sure that somebody's not like doctor shopping for as many prescriptions as they can harvest, but it also makes sure that allergies are appropriately accounted for drugs, and drug interactions can be considered. And just when you leave the doctor, that your prescription makes it to the pharmacist without too much trouble, right? That was a lot bigger of a problem in Mexico than it is in the U.S. system, because they just don't have that infrastructural automation like we have yet. So it's sort of leapfrogging in the same way that the cell phones leapfrogged landlines in places where where landlines weren't in by the time cell phones became a thing. So and it's a pretty cool project that I think is doing a lot of good.
Yeah, I remember that one now that you talk about it. And I remember that, like, everything that dude shared about his project was impressive and I think important. So thanks for reminding us about that.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have any examples?
I've got one from chat, actually, from Bad Hair Club, who apparently did crypto insurance. This is related to healthcare. If you think about insurance fraud and the costs associated with healthcare insurance and things like that, just using it to prevent insurance fraud or make it more difficult to prevent identity theft and things like that. There's a lot of reasons for inflated healthcare costs. One of them is the insurance industry. So any kind of efficiencies or reduction in fraud should theoretically bring the bottom line down. Whether or not those savings would be passed on to the consumer is a different question. But there's a lot of room to bring costs of healthcare down, especially in the United States. So yeah, I think it's a separate issue than we've been talking about. So I wanted to bring that up, but that's an example.
Great. Well, thanks, Bad Hair Club, for giving us that example. Oren, do you have any examples or any ideas of things that we might be able to start implementing?
I think just in general, just even after hearing Lisa's story, just some sort of just blockchain to just track a person's, healthcare information and having some soul-bound token. It just seems like a lot of this information is in different places, and something like an immutable ledger could just help us to centralize it, and then having some sort of verifiable token for us to be able to prove that we are the owner of that data. I think in Web3, we're still pretty early. I think like people's adoption of it, and then especially like solutions for healthcare. So I think we're still like kind of in like the early parts. And I think you can see that in like the data solutions that are out there and like some of the zero knowledge proofs. I've seen some cool insurance, like crypto insurance, right? Like if I get hacked on PancakeSwap or something, we all put in money and I pay this claim and I can pull out. So I think using something like that for healthcare would also be interesting. And even for like parametric damage for like wildfires and things like that is another application.
That's great. Lisa, anything that you've seen and maybe in any kind of research, or are you still just hoping for a solution?
I'm loving hearing all these solutions. I love Oren's idea about, even looking at health insurance and kind of, grouping together like a community health insurance solution. I think that's a great idea too. More peer-to-peer solutions. I think all of that is, when we can come together and get rid of the middleman, we can find solutions and we all win when that happens. Right. So I think that's great.
Like a DAO-based friendly society. That would be the coolest thing.
Right. Love it.
Sean, have you run across any healthcare blockchain?
There's a lot of that interconnectivity with what you do, but it's usually in a network. There's a lot of hospitals where I live. I mean, a lot of really huge, like famous hospitals, like a dumb amount. But there's like 2 or 3 networks that they're on, like Scott and White. That's a huge one. You can go to certain hospitals and they can pull all your stuff up. And then there's some other, like Advent hospital system. They're connected into that, so they can pull your stuff up. But it's still in the procedures, because I almost died February before last. I went to a local hospital that I like to go to that's like in the next town, small, no one goes there. The emergency room takes like an hour. And they were like, "Oh, you're septic." I'm like, "Okay, well, hook me up those antibiotics, bro." And they're like, "Well, we don't want to do that." And I'm like, "You just said I was septic. That means I'm going to die." They're like, "Well, that is a possibility, but we want to make sure you don't develop a resistance to antibiotics." I'm like, "No, that doesn't matter right now because I could die." And then they're like, okay, we got to send you to Baylor, to the university hospital, because we're not sure. And they asked me like 50,000 stupid questions. They ran like 25 tests. So that I get an ambulance, we drive like an hour to get to Baylor, and I get out. I'm like, all right. They're like, yeah, you're septic. Yeah. So you give me some antibiotics. Well, let's hold off on that for a minute. I'm like, why? They're like, hey, and then they asked me the same questions over again. I'm like, dude, I answered all these questions. Like, well, I said, they did all those tests already. Don't you have those tests? Well, we do have some of the tests, but we just want to run it on our own because that's a HIC hospital or, university hospital. It's like, the system is so stupid. So then they're like, oh, we got to admit you because, you're probably going to die. I'm like, just give me some antibiotics, man. And then I'm in the hospital for 2 days and they're running all this stuff. And then I'm like getting much worse. And then I told the doctor something really gross. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. Let's do this really gross test on you. So they did a really gross test. You got this super form of botulism, food poisoning. Did you eat this, that, and that? I was like, well, I did eat very uncooked chicken liver like 5 days ago. They're like, yeah, that's probably it. And then I'm like, okay. So like, yeah, you really need some antibiotics, man. Get you some antibiotics. 4 hours, it was better.
Jesus.
4 hours. Whole system.
There's got to be a market for that on Silk Road, right? Like for antibiotics, just you can take care of that shit when the doctor won't.
I found there's like natural antibiotics and some antibiotics that you can buy now over the counter for emergency stuff. Like if you're going on a trip, you're going camping, you can literally buy an emergency ration or amount of antibiotics.
Yeah, you get a little Z-Pack. I think this is an interesting idea. My wife just texted me a question asking, how much energy does it cost to mine crypto? Somebody wants to know, which I thought was just a hilarious question because I'm just like, what capacity? It's $0, or you could have an entire farm in the middle of nowhere.
Can I take this one?
Well,
less energy than it takes to mint dollars, maybe. I don't know.
I wasn't going to have it.
It costs to run a data center.
That wasn't going to be the question, right? The question what I was going to say is, well, also this could be a nice way to like lower energy costs for companies that are running giant servers to keep all this information wherever it is, right? It's going to be like a cost benefit as well. If they're able to actually use these new technologies to keep this information and to send information and everything else. But yeah, did you want it?
That is a good, it is a great question though. And it's a good observation too, John, because right now you do have everybody maintaining the same sort of infrastructure. Because really, what have you got? You've got a bunch of data in database and you got to secure it. And you got to have all of this infrastructure running to keep it secured and access controls and all that stuff. And what a lot of this decentralization and blockchain tech is proposing fundamentally is, what if there was one of those that just existed as a part of nature that anybody could use, right? That it was inherently secure, and you could just use that instead of having to run a bunch of all of this, these competing or duplicated data systems that already take up gobs of energy on the planet.
And even like excess energy that's just being spilled over and things like that, that's being just burned at the end, that doesn't get used, that's created, like that energy could go towards this. And you're giving these subsidies to maybe publicly funded hospitals or whatever to help reduce medical bills for people, something like that even. We could find a way to group that into a subsidy for people or help to pay for people that don't have health insurance, right?
There's definitely energy out there to run infrastructure. I know the city that I live in pays companies to take excess energy from them because we produce too much of it at the local utility company. The power company literally overproduces so much energy and they need it to go somewhere. So they literally pay other people to take it. So there's energy that can be used for this. It isn't like we're creating more energy to run these systems in every case.
There's two things to keep in mind too, I think, that really need to be said. Like, one is like, currently it does seem to use a lot of energy relative to the amount of people that use it, but the energy usage doesn't scale up linearly. Like for more, you don't get like this sort of there's this implied false equivalence where they say it only does this many transactions, but the globe does this many. So imagine how much more energy it will use when it reaches global scale. Well, it actually doesn't scale up like that. It's going to be about the same amount of energy if planet Earth uses it as the current amount of people use it, right?
Yeah, your fridge can keep one sandwich cold, or it can keep 100 sandwiches cold, and it uses the same energy.
Actually uses less if you have more sandwiches in there.
And I think that's
point number two.
Okay, go ahead.
Open Google Maps, search banks, and start scrolling, because all of those physical locations, all of the people driving to and from work to staff them, all of the electricity, all of the energy, all of the carbon, all of that is calculated into the cost of running the dollar before you even start talking about all the smelters that go into creating the nickel and steel and copper to make the coins, and all the cotton fields you have to grow in order to make the paper, right? Like, and that's not even talking about the server infrastructure they already run. Like, it's not a
and the isotopes that you have to produce to dope the bills for anti-counterfeit, and the on and on and on and on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incomparably more efficient to even use the least efficient blockchain to replace any given current analog banking system that we currently have.
And with that, that's been our show. Thanks for hanging out with us here at World Blockchain Roundtable. We have been talking about healthcare for most of the time. It's been a wonderful week. Join us next week, where we are going to be talking about this is the theme. I don't know what it means yet, but it's going to be fun. That's all I know. It's decrees as blockchain king or queen. Don't know what that means. I'll have to figure that out. But it's
that's pistol braces.
There it is. I don't know what that means, but we'll do it. Sounds exciting. Join us next week. Leave a question. Leave a comment. Tell us what you want us to talk about, because we're going to do it. Share. Don't forget to share this episode. The more you share, the more our host and everybody else is going to get. Or in anything you want to plug or tell people. Or as an alternate, you can tell us how much it costs to mine crypto. If somebody were to just ask you that.
I feel like I'm a little biased to answer this question, because I'm creating a platform where basically you get paid for mining your data, for companies to mine your data. So we're creating a platform where companies like Google, Coca-Cola will post surveys, and at the minimum, they have to pay 25 cents. So let's say 25 cents per survey is a rate that we're trying to put out there and get to be standard. So I'm working on Question. We're going to mainnet in the next basically month. I'm going to be sharing previews of it, of course, share the alpha here. And we're also working on a data wallet. So I think a lot of this conversation related to data, zero knowledge proofs, and privacy and autonomy, I think is important. And I'm trying to create a device that no matter what application, you're in control of your data, and then people can request access from this canister. So yeah.
Cool. Which chains is it on first?
It's on Polygon. We're sourcing the Polygon ID SDK for it. So yeah.
Cool. Hey, I need to talk to you about getting some Rivet infrastructure.
That'd be lovely. I'll hit you. Thank you.
Dave, anything you want to plug, or do you want to tell us how much it costs to mine crypto?
Yeah, I want to plug an upcoming project that I think is really exciting called Question. I've always been sort of irritated at the idea of these major monolithic companies mining valuable data from local communities and profiting off of it without giving anything back to the people who they are harvesting it from. So at the very least, we should be able to sell our own data for our own profit. So that's one project that sounds like they're doing something really good in the world, and you should check out Question and follow them. They're using the Polygon network, I hear, and I think that that's a really good idea.
Yeah,
and it
should be coming out about a month, right?
I think so. Yeah.
About it.
Yeah. Also, I want to plug the current events segment that's coming right after we get done with our outro here. We're gonna roll an outro video, and then we're gonna come back and talk about current events. One of which is pistol braces. We can talk about that during current events.
Greg, anything you want to plug? Tell us.
Tough act to follow. Let's see. I'm gonna just say this. For those of us out here in the audience who are still skeptical about crypto, right? Who maybe look at this and ask questions like, how do we keep it private? How do we do these things? These are questions that to a certain degree we're re-answering because we screwed it up the first time around. A lot of what this whole movement and whole effort is about re-architecting the internet to make up for the mistakes of the past. And if we screw it up again, there will be a web 4. And if we do that, it'll be Web 5. We're just going to keep making new versions better and better. So bring those points of angst to the table, and rather than necessarily stop at just the question of bring yourself and your ideas and your problems and your ideal solutions for them to the table, and build something, because you can help, and we really need people to be critical, especially outside perspectives.
Yeah, great. And Sean, anything you'd like to say or plug current events that's happening next?
Yeah, plug current events, man. Come up, talk about pistol braces that 36 million people owned that were going to be just turned into felons because of the ATF changing a law that they originally approved, said they were fine, and then just say, okay, now that y'all have bought all those, you're going to be felons.
Weren't they cruising for a duel with the Americans with Disabilities Act? Because I thought they were over that one. Isn't the pistol brace kind of an accessibility device?
Yeah, it was an accessibility device. But, they said that a little piece of metal like this was a machine gun. So they could just change stuff. And that's the big point of what Lisa said, is that these agencies are not allowed to make laws. And it's been fine. The checks and balances have worked. Congress passed the laws, and these agencies, enforce them. But they got this carte blanche when it comes to interpreting them. So they could say, hey, we interpret this to mean this. We just put out and then literally make a law. So I think
you sir are talking about Chevron deference, as I recall.
We have to change that system where they have to. I think, and there's someone that made a bill where if they're going to change and they put a dollar on it, if it's going to be like over $100 million, they have to request approval by Congress, which is amazing. That's exactly what we need. Yeah. So
we got to bring this one back up in current events, because I've got some more skinny on this one. This is a really interesting little piece of nuance.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about pistol braces. Just so for people that don't know what that is, that's when you put pistols in your braces on your teeth. So that way your smile kills. Like when anything you want to say or plug on the way out of here?
Yeah, coming up on our meetup in Peoria, Illinois at Peoria Pizza Works on June 23rd at 3 p.m. We'll be doing the live happy hour show with my buddy Clint Westwood there. We have a bunch of giveaways. He's going to be, if you download a wallet, he is giving Litecoin to new wallet holders. And then we've got a bunch of swag that we're going to be doing some drawings. Like I said, we're going to be streaming the live show. And so if you're anywhere near Peoria, Illinois, come to Peoria Pizza Works at 3 p.m. We'll be there all evening hanging out with the fam. And I also want to push one more thing. The Sound of Freedom is coming out 4th of July, and it is a documentary about saving children. It's Tim Draper's story. And so I recommend everybody checking that out.
Does that have Jim Caviezel in it?
Yes. Great. Mel Gibson directed it. Jim Caviezel's in it.
We can talk more about that in current events. I believe this is also the sequel to The Sound of Music. So we'll talk about that. I've been your host, John Branch. Hope you've had a fun show with us. Join us next week, same time, same place. Go ahead and get in the comments and let us know what decrees as blockchain king or queen mean to you, and what you want us to talk about. Until then, we'll see you next week. Bye. Or and see you at current events next.
Hit the like button.
While nuclear weapons states can exert unlimited violence over even millions of individuals, strong cryptography means that a state, even by exercising unlimited violence, cannot violate the intent of individuals to keep secrets from them. Cryptography is the ultimate form of non-violent direct action.
All right. That was good. Hey, I brought some props for current events. I've got my pistol brace, which is basically attached to a slingshot right now. So I don't know if that counts. If I have a slingshot,
It's not a pistol, but yeah.
but it could be a brace that I put on a pistol. It just isn't. It isn't on a pistol. It's got a pistol grip.
Machine gun.
It's got a pistol grip. It could go on a pistol, but it's not. So I thought, Sean, you had a good point about retroactive felonism, or whatever you want to call that, because that's some scary shit, right? Some things that you can do today is perfectly fine, and then later on they go back and say, oh, by the way, you can't do that anymore. And if you have been doing that, you're automatically going to jail, because that's the kind of things that tyrannical governments employ to get rid of the type of people they don't want around.
Exactly.
Well, it's regulatory state stuff,
on this thing, though, this
right?
was made, right? This disabled vet made this. He got it, like, mass produced. They brought it to the ATF. The ATF said, "Oh, that is lovely, approved." So they already approved it and said it was fine, and then went back like a couple years later, and said, "Oh no, we're changing it." So it's like, it's not like it was approved before, or they weren't involved. They directly said it was fine. They directly approved it, and then went back. So it's even.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask a question really quick too? Just because like Bad Hair Club brought it up, and I'm super curious because my wife's a physician, and I'm here because she's meeting with all of her physician colleagues because they work for something else, and they were telling me that it's like $2,000 to submit an article to a medical journal, and that they don't pay anybody that reads the article. That's all from like just volunteering and things like that. I'm like, that's a pretty cool way to make money. It's just by owning a medical journal. And then he mentioned medical journals on blockchain, so that way people can't go back and alter the medical journals.
You're talking about DeSci, actually, which is really amazing. Decentralized science.
Yeah, it's definitely it's one of those applications that makes sense. Just if you think about it for any length of time at all, it makes so much sense. If it's even just securing it as as it was written at the time that it was submitted, being able to go back and alter it, but also things like so my wife also is published and has experience publishing in journals and scientific journals and stuff. And something that I learned, just like you were talking about, that there aren't a lot of incentives for people to not cheat, except for the peer review process, which in itself is lacking, right? So there could be a lot of work done just on the provability and the incentive side of the house that brings more credibility into journals.
Is there a just like asking this question out loud too? It's like, is there a conflict of issue? Like, is there a conflict of interest or a morality issue with paying people that review journal articles? Because I'm like, is there a way to pay them not in money, or like, or is it just like, or is there just a conflict paying them at all, and that's why they have to do it pro bono? Like, I don't.
Not if you pay up front, I don't think, because it's like, once I have the money, I'll be as honest as I want to be. If you're holding payment till after the review, that's completely different. But
it could make a difference on whether or not I use you as a reviewer in the future.
Here's what I think should happen.
Well,
you can do things. So Joe talks about bounties all the time, and I think this is a really good application for bounties. If you submit an article to a journal, let's say you own a journal, you design it from the ground up, you want to have it blockchain enabled. You could design it where that fee that you pay to submit a paper to the journal goes into a bounty system, where the people reviewing the peer review process can now be incentivized to point out anything that's incorrect or wrong or bad, or people trying to just churn something for funding. Anything that you can apply that money to that doesn't, maybe some of it does go to the company that's building the journal, but it goes into a bounty system where the peer review process is incentivized to really honestly look for flaws instead of just signing off on it. Because I've seen personally, and I'm not even a scientist who's trained in looking for this stuff, But I've seen things where in a published, submitted article for a journal, somebody has taken an image that was supposed to have been of, cells in an experiment, but really it was copied from an experiment 2 years ago and turned a little bit and zoomed in so it looks like a new image. And stuff like that shows up all the time and it doesn't get caught. I don't think that there's good enough incentives for people to be as thorough as they need to be.
And the current peer review process is really broken. Like, those guys need to get paid, because what happens right now is ostensibly these people are, okay, picture you're a research scientist who has been asked to peer review somebody else's work when you are already under pressure to publish a lot of your own stuff and to do your own research, and you've got papers to grade and all this other bullshit going on, and there's a stack of peer reviews you got to do. People slam through those fast and never look back, right? They might catch an error, they might not. It's really imprecise. So shifting to a world where you might have some perverse incentive that's sort of an obvious, like a blowback perverse incentive, because like paying somebody to actually do the review is probably good. You'll get a better result. You put a little bit of money incentive behind it, and all of a sudden peer review gets a lot better. So I think paying for peer review, especially in a blockchain context where it can be public payments and doesn't look like bribery, right? Can be very powerful.
That's the key. You have to design it in a way that isn't incentivizing bribery. It doesn't even appear to be bribery, because as we all know, perception is reality, right?
Right. I mean, you could even probably do something that they currently don't do, which, believe it or not, when you get published, you sign away your rights, your royalty rights, to the journal, and the journal just keeps as gravy, right? Like, what would happen if some of the subscription fees that they charge actually went to covering the peer review process? Then it would be the journal paying the reviewers to give a good review, right? And that doesn't happen.
Ultimately, the journal should want a good reputation, right? They want people to trust it and to read it and to take it seriously. Right. So anything that you can do to
need it too right now without doing much. So.
Oh, I mean, there are journals that just want stuff. There's a journal that's literally called, I think it's called the Green Tea Journal, and it's purely about how green tea helps you. So like, because you'll read certain stuff and it'll just be like, oh, green tea had benefits here and here and here. It's like, it wasn't the green tea. We all know it wasn't the green tea. It was the medication they were on, and it wasn't the green tea. They happen to be taking green tea. That's not the thing. But yeah, that's super interesting. I'll have to talk to you more. I don't know. Let's build it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, you guys remember too the journal hoax stuff too? That kind of stuff would definitely not happen if you were paying reviewers. Right?
The what? The what stuff?
The journal hoax that they did like back in. When did that happen? Where they like tricked the journal
Park thing? Are you talking about? Yeah, the fake papers guys. Yeah, that was interesting. I vaguely remember that, but I know what you're talking about. Some people wanted to see how easy it was to get bullshit published and peer reviewed, and they succeeded several times.
Right, just by playing to the biases of the journals they're publishing towards.
Yeah.
Yep. And totally, and I promise the last point on one, totally other thing that could be considered to be replication studies being funded by the journal directly if you had some kind of direct contribution system.
Or even just a way, if we're talking like, accountability and blockchain tracking stuff, it makes it pretty efficient to do things like identify where public funding has had a hand in research. And even if you have a paid access journal, allow those articles to be openly read without being behind.
Like big pharma.
Like chain analysis, but for science accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One more quick question before I do need to probably go in a second. So I just want to ask this. Bad Hair Club posted something called KillNet is all. Group, and they're hacked to be tomorrow against Swift. I assume he's not talking about me, right?
Not T-Swift.
Okay, good.
T-Swift is safe.
I feel like I'm not that controversial. I feel like
So has anybody heard about this? Because I barely have.
Is that the link that I just posted that said the government just got hacked or whatever?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to check it out and see.
Bad Hair Club. Can you give us some more context?
So
let's see.
Exclusive U.S. government agencies hit in U.S. global cyber attack.
If this is today, then maybe.
This is today.
but maybe not, because so what had happened was
Maybe.
there was some anonymous people who are like, oh, we are anonymous and we wear hooded things with masks, and they said we're gonna take down the European Union's financial system. So maybe it's not this, because it's talking about U.S.
So the
government
Swift
stuff.
network, then. So the Swift network is what they're.
So they're like, this is not going to be a DDoS attack. This isn't going to be just some website going down. We are going to. It's over. All this is over. Screw you guys. We're nuking the whole thing, and it's going to happen within 48 hours. So that's all we know. It could just be an elaborate marketing plan for launching a new cryptocurrency to compete with the Swift. I don't know what it is, but I think it's interesting because it's gotten a lot of coverage. At least from the things I read.
That kind of brings me to a current event. I talked about this with Lisa. Guy Ritchie put out a new movie. I don't know if y'all know about it, but it's Operation something. Jason Statham, Hugh Grant. Take care.
See you, dude. Thanks.
Good movie. It was a really good movie, but it didn't have a lot of the push. It wasn't really talked about. It wasn't even for sale or on streaming stuff for like a long time after it came out. It's very odd. It was just odd. So then we watched the movie last Friday, and guess what it's about? Spoiler. So they're basically they're these private contractors, like secret, service, like Archer, that kind of thing. So the government gets this one guy who's Cary Elwes. He's in it. Amazing guy. Anyway, and they said, hey, somebody stole something from this place. We don't know what it is, but now everything's crazy and everyone's bidding on us, trying to buy this thing for like $10 trillion or $10 billion. You need to find out what it is and steal it back or steal it. So I'm gonna find out it's this like super AI that can rewrite anything and do anything, blah blah. So, and these two tech guys are trying to buy it, like Bill Gates and Facebook guy. I always forget his name. Anyway,
Zuckerberg.
So these two guys are trying to buy it because they want to, but then everyone sees, it's like over the course of the movie, they just keep buying gold, and they keep talking about they're not doing anything weird, they're just buying like tons of gold, man. So then their idea is to crash the financial system, like what they're talking about, and then use the AI to crash the financial system, and then their gold's going to be worth tons of money. The whole movie, I'm like, that's literally what's happening right now. That's probably why they didn't push this movie, because that's what's happening. But I thought that was very interesting. So if this happens, that's your gold, silver, all that stuff's going to, the money that's been money forever is going to be worth the most money again.
Right. Well, I mean, and probably a couple things that people have only experimentally used for money so far that we all know and love, right?
Well, lead is also a metal, but stuff like spices and other things.
There's a bunch of silver missing. Bix has been doing a bunch of reporting on at the Mint. There's a bunch of silver eagles that are missing from the Mint. Like I can't remember if they came off the COMEX. They show them coming off the COMEX, but they're not showing up in the Mint's inventory or something like that. I don't know. He's been talking to this guy who does sales there. And he's found where they've broken 3 different laws. They're making money off of they're making money off of selling the eagles. They're making money off their hedge and something else. So I don't know. It's crazy. So maybe they're doing silver instead of gold, like in the movie.
Why is it illegal to make money off of silver?
The Mint they're not supposed to make money off of the American people. They're supposed to do as market.
Like when they outlawed Americans holding gold and took all the gold and then drove the price of gold up and then sold the gold. Like they're not allowed to do that?
Not allowed to do that either.
Oh, okay. I just wonder.
Yeah. Criminals everywhere. Yeah. I'm curious. So we were talking earlier about how like these 3-letter agencies are, basically creating their legislation. And Greg wrote a great article about the Chevron thing. I want you to talk more about that. But also, I have this little conspiracy theory percolating in my head that so Congress has been at minimum neglectful, at most unlawful, in neglecting their duties to create crypto laws, and they have not done right by the American people. It's stifled innovation in America, and left us way behind in the rest of the world. And now you see this, what I think could be allegedly. I wore my "the hell I won't" shirt instead of "I'm not a lawyer" shirt, but the could be a collusion between Coinbase and the SEC, where they're now in court, where there's no allegations against Brian, but they are able to have this situation where now precedents could be set. So not laws necessarily, but precedents could be set where they could make the rules about crypto moving forward, kind of like they jumped the shark of Congress making laws about crypto, and now Coinbase and SEC get to play in the sandbox of making laws for crypto in America moving forward. What are your thoughts?
Wasn't somebody recently
actually,
talking about not being above shutting the door behind them kind of thing? And wasn't that someone from Coinbase?
Well,
Also, Greg, can you kind of explain the difference between like case law and a regular law?
yeah, sure. So anytime someone points, someone says, "What does the Constitution say?" Right? Or somebody says, "What does this statute really mean?" Like, you're not supposed to sell unregistered securities according to the SEC, right? What is a security is the question. Well, that answer is not set by the way the law is written. There's no written down anything anywhere. Like, if you want to know what the Constitution means, yes, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, right? Abridging the right to free speech or the right to bear arms. But where are the boundaries of what that means, right? Like, we don't know that until a body with authority chimes in, and that body happens to be the courts. That's their role in our constitutional system, right? They're supposed to say what it means when it's not so damn obvious. And that's a pretty contentious thing to do because there's so many different theories on how it should work and what it should be and what it shouldn't be, right? And people are still people, and these are 9 folks, right, who are just people who are asked to do their very best not to let their biases get in the way of themselves, and they have life appointments and they're not exposed to political process, right? Ostensibly to make them safe from that. But what it really comes down to is precedent is what gets written about the law by officials who have the authority to speak about what the law means. And they follow this rule. It's called, and they followed this since the 1800s, called stare decisis. This actually comes from England.
What's it called again? You kind of broke up.
Stare decisis. STAREDECISIS. Stare decisis. And the idea is essentially, if you make a law by precedent, or if you set a law's meaning by precedent, you shouldn't deviate from that precedent unless you have a very good, clearly articulated reason to do so. The law favors coherence. So if you have a past precedent, you are somewhat bound by that unless you're a court that can overturn it. So the Supreme Court says something about case law, about the First Amendment. All courts with less power than them, the district courts, the appellate courts, bound hard to follow it, right? The Supreme Court decides to overrule itself. It can, but it's supposed to have a good reason if it's following its own rules.
Like Roe v. Wade.
Right, with Roe v. Wade, right. And the lower court couldn't overturn that. They could. And even though they could, they had to go through great lengths to explain it. Even the opinion that they wrote for that was longer than you might have expected from people who you expected to do what they did, right? Now, within that concept, and this is going to get a little intricate, but I want you guys to try to bear with me. They're like helper tools they can use, little reasoning tricks, like heuristics that they can follow to say like, what do we do with this statute? Well, let's follow what we call these canons of construction. And they can be stuff like, the legislature doesn't insert superfluous words. So we're not going to read out a word as unnecessary. They wrote just the right number of words. There's not one of them that's unnecessary. We're going to give every word meaning if we can, right? Or they'll say stuff like, the legislature intends the plain meaning of the word as opposed to a term of art meaning of the word. So if they're like talking about, speech, they're not talking about some very, very esoteric meaning of the word. They talk about the word speech itself. Or, a really good example is journalism, right? The free press. They don't mean like some journalistic responsibility thing. They mean like literally people who are publishing shit, right? The plain meaning canon, right? And then there's this other canon that's kind of a lot more controversial called the legislative intent canon, where they look at what the legislature did, they pull up the legislative record, they poke around at the committee reports, they try to get what the legislature was doing and meaning when they wrote a law. And then they read that back into the current precedent. Right? Already disfavored. Like a lot of judges from both sides of the aisle look at that and go, ugh, you should have something else than just that. It's like trying to make a public policy argument. Yeah, we use it, but we couldn't just use that and still really be comfortable that that was good law. Because they're bound by the precedent after that. They're stuck with it. And they don't want to be stuck with stuff that they can't follow. So where this becomes problematic, right? I think it was 1980, maybe it was 1982, the Chevron case, where the court was hearing, I forget which agency, I think it was the EPA actually, the regulators arguing for an interpretation of their enabling act that said, hey, we have the power to regulate this, that, and the other. And they were being challenged by the business who was going to be subject to that regulation. And the court said, well, normally we would interpret the meaning of this law that's not clear. We call de novo. Like we don't give any credibility to any other ruling but our own. We just read it and interpret it like we know how, and that's the rule. We're not going to give any deference to anybody who decided what this means before us. We're just going to read it. Well, they created this thing called the Chevron doctrine instead. They said if the regulator says this, though, since they're supposed to be an expert, we're going to defer to their meaning or their interpretation of the law if it's ambiguous. And that's going to include cases where the regulator is arguing that they need to increase the scope of their authority. So the regulator comes in and they say, I've got this reasonable interpretation of the law based on like what I know about the SEC because I studied my whole life to be a securities regulator, and I was a banker, and I was a blah, blah, blah. I love Ferdinand Pecora and more, like loves the whole thing together. You've heard Gensler do that speech in front of the House Banking Commission, right? Like talking about the SEC's historic purpose and mission. Importing that shit and then saying, basically, without saying, courts, this is in my authority. We have the right to call these securities. I'm going to call these securities. Don't reinterpret the act to see if this fits within the meaning of.
I think I remember him blatantly saying that, at least in one line when he was talking to Congress, was like, we decide what's a security.
Right. And actually the funny thing is right now Chevron is under question in another case. By the time Coinbase gets to them, they may not actually have Chevron deference to rely on anymore, which would be a really great outcome. There's actually another similar one, Lisa, from the thing you were talking about. I'd be too long-winded here. One law professor, everybody. But there's a major questions doctrine, which is the other one. And that's the one you're talking about with Coinbase and And the major questions doctrine essentially says, if it's a thing that is too big of a question mark for a single regulator to resolve, it's this too big, important, fundamental issue that the court doesn't also apply Chevron. That's the other problem. That's the other place where Chevron can get pared back by the court. And they pair that back with, just sort of like the broader deference of Chevron at the same time. Two cases that involve Gary Gensler's bad attitude will be the undoing of regulatory state more broadly, which could be great for the world, right? But it could also mean that they will make all sorts of devilish deals to try to stop it. And so I think there's a real risk that they try to buy off Coinbase with a friend ruling that shuts the door behind them.
Interesting.
Because Gensler does not want a court deciding on that because it's not going to look good for them if it gets to the Supreme Court in its current makeup, right? Because those guys are going to say, screw Chevron deference. They already kind of said they want to.
So, Lisa, were you saying that basically you're seeing some patterns that might indicate that there's some working together, some collusion between the SEC and Coinbase that might lead to a favorable outcome for Coinbase at the expense of others?
Yeah, that they're making the rules, like that there could be, we're seeing the Hinman emails. We saw Elizabeth Warren colluding with, wasn't she sending emails back and forth with the SEC before some hearing saying like, oh, is this how you want me to ask these questions? It's like there's these games that are pre-played and then they do the public version. And I'm wondering if this SEC Coinbase thing is part of it. Is like, oh, you know what? We're going to go into court and we'll play this game, and then we'll get to set the rules of crypto in America by playing out this game. Just like, Jamie Dimon manipulated silver for years. He'd make billions of dollars and pay a fine of millions and get the slap on the hand. And that was part of the game. And, and that was pay to play. And so is this Coinbase's pay to play and get to set the rules of the game?
You saw that kind of thing with FTX.
Right.
Right.
They could
same
actually.
thing with FTX.
Isn't it possible here that they say they are, that Coinbase is still the OG, right? That they got big, but that they still hold the values? Is that possible? Because I think it is. Like, personally, my take on it is, yeah, there could be some bullshit, but I actually kind of think they're being genuine in their standing.
They have all those connections with COPA, and COPA is, I think, lying to all those open source. I think they're trying to steal the little guy's IP to, walk in, open source, and you have to sign this thing saying that, you won't defend your own IP and all this, because they're going to let Wall Street and the big attorneys walk in there, and they're going to walk in and steal all these little guys' IP,
or as we see with the way, like, not to get too far into what's going on with Dragon Chain right now, but legalfund.dragonchain.com, there's, what could very well be some sort of plan to acquire patents. If you look at the patents that,
yes,
and I'm not officially speaking for Dragon Chain. This is my own conspiracy theory here, right? My personal thoughts. But if you look at what the patents cover, like, if you really look into what the patents cover, there's a reason that they've been referred to as holy grail patents, because if you're going to operate in this space in the USA, you're going to come across using technology in the way that was invented by them, right? And so if you can hammer someone to death and get them to the point where they have to sell their patents to be able to afford to fight their legal battles,
turn around and weaponize those patents against the
people. You can now, you own that. Yeah. So that's exactly what I think's happening. But that's my little conspiracy theory, because it seems like all the signs are there.
So much. To me, this is right in the same boat with Fox networks telling Tucker Carlson he can't make YouTube videos. Like, they're going to pay him millions of dollars a year to be fucking quiet. And people who just buy patents to make sure that they can take down any project that tries to use them and make a profit off their lawyering, just to be sick. Like, I really just don't like it.
It's
there should be a requirement on patents that say you have to use them or lose them.
It's Gensler's quote from MIT, though. They don't want the market disruptors. They want, the Google monopoly. They don't want free markets.
This was his instruction to his students. His instructions to his students were, how do you become allowed to operate in this country when you have monopolists who have an interest in slowing innovation? Well, maybe you create a token that controls your company and give half of those tokens to the corporate monopolists and stuff like that, or whatever terminology you use. But he's saying you should bribe them. You should give them your startup and let them control it. Otherwise, you're not going to be allowed to play. And this is what he was saying.
I personally prefer the Travis Kalanick answer. the fuck you, I'll beat you to the, I'll beat the regulators to the punt, and enforcement mechanisms will be $1 short and a day late. You know, the cab industries have their medallions or whatever, but everybody's riding Uber before you realize that there's anything to regulate.
Well, Uber did that. Uber took that approach of fuck it, we're going to get sued and going to continue operating until we're so.
Clinic got shot in the face for it, right? Like they made him bow to Ariana Huffington and then retired him ignominiously, right? Sucks for that guy, but
yeah, that was the approach they took.
But we
and I don't know the details, but I can still get an Uber almost anywhere in the world that I am right now. So
right.
That worked to some extent for somebody.
It definitely worked. It's just somebody had to take one for the team in order to get it through the door.
Bad Hair Club had a question back on the healthcare thing. If we wanted to backtrack a little bit, can you? I think the question basically is, can you be sent an NFT that only you can read? Yeah, you can be sent an email that only you can read. It's the same public-private key pair, like it's PGP, you know, the predicated blockchain and wallets and stuff like that.
Readable once and then never readable again.
You can also go into a restaurant and fart in people's faces. But then you should do it. I think people are too stupid for that. I know people are too stupid for that. Especially when you're talking about healthcare, a lot of people are having dementia or dying and losing grip on reality. They could easily lose their key, forget their key, so on and so forth. This is something where you do have to have a backup because it's all of your health records. Imagine
it's at least a burden on the developers to not frame it in these technological terminology, these scary sounding terms. You know, really, what somebody wants is something that says only you can read this. Press this button to get your one-time view. They don't need to know what's going on at the hood.
Use like key sharding and key splits to make it work right, though.
That sucks for you. But it doesn't. It's not like losing all of your medical history if you're, especially in the midst of like chemo or some kind of really.
But Sean, the fact that we need a trusted recovery mechanism doesn't mean we need a second trusted intermediary, right? Like we can use like key split type of approaches that can be built into the software, super easy to use. Where the idea is like
biometric.
Your aunt on one side of the country, your cousin on the other. Your twin sister and your mom and your grandma. And
we already do that kind of thing.
That's not feasible for
a key fragment where like
that's not feasible for
you need two of them
build
to
in
do recovery
into an emergency room.
The reason that I think that it is applicable though is because we already do it. We already do it. We already have powers of attorney. We already have, this person has access to tell the doctor what they can do for me. This is just a way to secure the existing system and make it more efficient.
Right.
You can apply the same thing we already do, but do it this way instead.
But
that's kind of my thing.
You're like wheeled into an emergency room, like bleeding and unconscious. Who's your aunt? How do we contact this?
They typically have your medical history in that case anyway.
They have to have some way to access it.
Well, people wear wristbands right now that have my blood type and my like next of kin on it if they choose to.
Yeah.
You know, these are problems that already exist.
Right.
So then
the answer to not knowing your blood type is you got to use O positive, right?
It's definitely a much more complicated issue than most others.
I'm one of those weirdos that like the idea of being microchipped, you know, for these kinds of reasons. You know, scan me, figure it out. Here's the information you need to save my fucking life. Scan me and do it. ERs will treat you even if they don't know who you are.
See, I want an onboard.
They're supposed to.
Before I do a chip, I want an onboard assistant that like they have to talk to the chat bot if they want to help them, and like it'll have some sensor data that can engage.
Hey, there you go. Your own personal AI. So this is something that I heard
inside your chip. That like
it's trained. It's trained exactly to your personality, and it gives the kind of answers that you would give. And it's you know it's
you don't need to know.
So this is something that
my life from a bullet wound.
I've never heard him talk about this before, except I listened into RFK's Twitter space with Elon Musk, and there was a very short part where somebody mentioned Neuralink, and Elon talked about Neuralink for a second, and he implied this idea of like basically Neuralink being an interface that allows like an other self AI to live with you in your head.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's okay. All right. There's something.
Right.
Now that's scary, but it's also
doctor-
really interesting.
Imagine the doctor tries to get
You're getting one of those, by the way, as soon as they let
doctor
people
tries
just
to get
enhance with them.
information, and the
Totally
guy's
all
like,
right, but
hey, wait, who did you vote for? I want to decide if I want to interact with you. You know what's your political affiliation before I let you have the information. They're like,
people are like,
I can see that happening now.
what happens if they find out you did vote? They like burn everybody at the stake. You can get the standoff treatment.
Well, yeah, that's back to the thing about the gun braces. You can do something that's legal and then later it's illegal. And if all you have to do is select a demographic and say, what do they all have in common? Oh, they like carrots. There's a bunch of carrot-eating opponents of mine politically out there. And they say, you know what? No more carrots. You got carrots? You ever ate a carrot? You're out. No more carrot people. And that's a ridiculous example, but like, okay, where's the threshold then?
I like us really.
Yeah, that's like a pretty big risk too with blockchains, ultimately, because you don't have to change much code to make a change like that, right? You can literally have a new version of a smart contract go out that doesn't take very many lines of code, and you can change the fundamental behavior and kind of from one that was just helpful before.
Well, this is like since we're in this company, I'll go down the conspiracy rabbit hole again. The war on drugs. There's an argument, very convincing argument, that the war on drugs was created to disenfranchise black and hippie voters at the time that it was passed. So like these are political games that have been played with people's lives for a long time, if that's true, which it seems like it very well might be.
A reporter was defenestrated and died in obscurity over that whole thing, right? The CIA was running the drugs in. And the practice the law. They don't like to talk about. You know what they hate to talk about? That I'm going to say right now to see if it makes our viewership drop. You know where most of the fentanyl comes from? The poppy fields. The fentanyl that now poisons us comes from. It comes through Mexico. Comes kind of because it comes through Mexico, but it's grown in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
it comes from the demand of people being idiots enough to want to, like, assholes selling it. And subcultures wanting it. There's a demand for it.
I think it's a Cobra effect. Right? Like if we never tried to prosecute a war on drugs, people would still just be doing.
It's also China's payback
that they were making when they first came out with it.
It's also China's payback for us doing it to them first.
And a lot of it comes from China, but I guess they probably do buy it from
Afghanistan. It's the one bunker cross.
It's always been the main place for heroin and stuff. But the fentanyl, I don't understand. Fentanyl's like it's insane. Like if you touch it, you die. You don't have to take it. Like,
yeah, I lost a friend to that earlier this year. It's stupid and it's terrible. Yeah. This is what I point to when I say, like, I support the legalization of all drugs, so that we can regulate them and you know what you're buying, because people are dying because some dealer told them, I think it's this. Just go ahead. That's fine. You just take my word for it. And there's no way to really.
And with the Adderall shortage, we all need to be able to buy it on the dark web without worrying taking fentanyl instead. Right.
In Oklahoma, they put in all these like Coke. They're like Coke machines, vending machines with free testing kits because the fentanyl crisis is so bad here. I guess they're cutting it. I guess it's cheap, so they cut it with like the other kinds of drugs that people like to take.
Yeah, that's what they do.
And so they have free testing kits, and they're anonymous and all that, just because they're trying to save people's lives. We lost a family member.
People are buying it intentionally. It's not even a matter of it being cut.
Oh, I didn't realize
to deceive people. People are intentionally buying.
They want to cut it in themselves.
Oh wow!
Right? Because so here's the trick. Because they have to run this stuff through essentially interdiction to move it around or buy it all, right? There are men with guns coming for them around everywhere. Would you rather have something really potent that can fit in something about the size of your pinky nail, or would you rather have something a lot less potent, safer, that's about the size of a golf ball, right? Of course, you're going to go for the thing that's super potent, the size of your pinky nail. You can hide it easier.
But if you
Same
hide it,
principle with gold shipping, right? Like they want lower weight. They want to be able to bring it in on smaller planes or whatever.
It's definitely true that the higher the concentration, the easier it is. Even as a regular drug user driving around or going to a music festival or something, you know, like
Right.
like
Well,
anything that's
interdiction-
yeah.
Right. Prediction itself is what made it have market value to begin with, and now that it exists, there's no stuffing it back in the ball.
Did you guys hear about? I was listening to Louis Rossman, I think is his name, was talking about this recently. From another one from Bad Hair Club was talking about Amazon shutting down basically this guy's whole house. He had a smart house with a bunch of Amazon stuff, Amazon controlled stuff, and he had an automated doorbell that. What later ended up being the case was he checked his surveillance. Luckily, he had footage to show what really happened. The delivery guy had headphones on, and he heard something that he thought it said one thing, but it was just an automated doorbell. It was like I don't know if it was a Ring or something, but it was an automated doorbell system.
Ring doorbell, and it said something that was pre-programmed by Amazon.
Yeah, and the guy thought that somebody said something insulting, like a racial slur or something, and so he reported the guy to Amazon, and Amazon was like, just unilaterally just turned off all the guy's access to their infrastructure, which meant his light bulbs and his like I don't know what he had, his door locks, safety stuff,
conditioning.
Yeah, he couldn't operate his house all of a sudden because it was all voice operated, and somebody else controlled that. That was pretty wild.
True Tuesday. I didn't do True Tuesday, but we did hit on a little bit when we did the first half. And everyone's like arguing the points of should Amazon have done this and that. They shouldn't have a say so.
Right.
Like literally, the guy could have opened the door in a Speedo and said every racial slur that there is, and then that the dude could just decide not to come back. It's not illegal to hurt someone's feelings. And some words are bad, but they're not illegal because we don't have illegal speech or speech.
Yeah, it's this interpretation of words as violence, you know, this kind of thing, where now you're applying logic that's supposed to be held for physical attacks,
even if
on people.
Let's say you open the door naked, not in a Speedo, naked, so that would be probably illegal. It's his own property, but probably illegal for sexual stuff, and then beat the shit out of the guy.
But a private company.
Now, what point, Amazon still has no authority to do a damn thing to a private citizen.
Right. I mean, and it's not really a private company thing either, because we're talking common carrier and last mile delivery. Those delivery vehicles, those services are regulated to the freaking tooth fillings. I looked into once, like, how I could possibly get around the fact that the U.S. was going to make it so the post office would stop shipping vapes, and FedEx and UPS was going to comply just for the sake of it. As it turns out, they don't check the package as well. So the right answer is just order it anyway and see what happens. Pay for the insurance, but for anybody curious, you can just still order them.
I agree. Amazon could say we don't want to have your account, we don't want to sell you stuff. We don't want, as a company, we will do this, but not if you're paying for a service like for the light bulbs or for whatever. They could cancel it at the end of the term. Where does it say? It reminded me of
no setting up a competitor.
Where
to be more liberal,
where they signed the terms of service and they all got turned into the human centipede. You're reminding me of something like that, because that has to have been in your terms of service. And if you do some kind of thing that we don't like with speech, that we could shut your stuff down, I don't think they would have done it unless it was in there.
Well, I mean, every terms of use includes a pretty boilerplate clause that's something along the lines of threat to public health and more, and something along those lines. They can make a public health issue out of it.
Hey, we've got 5 minutes left. Do you want to talk about Prometheum?
Yes, I was going to say, Joe's mentioning this. I watched this creepy guy I watched part of this interview yesterday, and then I went on to Twitter and I start watching. He is so, like, they are just He's obviously in their pocket. They've already built out, when you guys were talking about, they're like, oh, well, we've created this platform where they can basically do companies. Crypto doesn't need to do ICOs. They can get on our platform and have a Kickstarter experience on our platform so that we control everything.
You just gave some shill lord a fucking marketing platform is what they did.
It's totally a bunch of bullshit, and it's totally used because the SEC couldn't point to a single company where they gave them any sort of license to do anything, and now they can go and say, "Oh, look, we had the process works. These people were able to do it, and if they were able to do it, why can't everybody else?"
Right.
Well, the bullshit part is that no, they don't have a license to do shit. They can't sell tokens. They can't sell securities alongside commodities. They can't have anything that's decentralized that can be taken off and peer-to-peer traded. They aren't able to do the things that they're implying that they're able to do, and it has nothing to do with this entire industry is trying to talk to regulators about.
Congress literally
them to
got
Reggie.
ICO rugged.
I sent him to Reggie and said, I'm pretty sure this is infringing on Veritasium. Maybe you need to have your attorneys look into it. How ironic would that be if Reggie went after Prometheum?
I feel like we got to make Prometheum disappear, like we do.
Make them the example.
Well, no, I mean disappear, like as in like we should probably just like gentleman shadow ban on this person, because
I mean they can do Prometheum can do whatever they want to do, man, but we don't have to care about it. It isn't what we're trying to do. It isn't what people are arguing about. Even they're trying to move the goalpost or whatever you want to say, but they're trying to make it out like, oh, Prometheum is an example of successfully using the existing laws to do the thing that everybody else is refusing to do. But that is a lie. That is not that what they're doing is not what the decentralization movement is about. It's not about what cryptocurrency is doing. It's not about
they're doing.
And I don't even know that much about them, but I know that
a database and calling it crypto and doing the thing that like, they're essentially it's Web 2 and Web 3 clothing, right? Is what it is. But setting that aside, right? We should probably not get distracted by it, because they're not, like, we know for a fact that there are people on these committees in there that know what the shit they're talking about. They know what a scam looks like. They know what a legit project looks like. And they're giving this a voice probably just to rile us up and distract us from the other stuff.
Joe's right, though. Their funding is from a CCP source.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I haven't, like I said,
up in the hearing. And
I know
it's definitely not a new justification for the Restrict Act.
When I look into things for the first time, my immediate questions are: what are you doing? How does it work? What's the engineering behind it? What does it functionally do? And I haven't gotten beyond that even. So I don't know anything about their funding. I don't know anything about like the politics about it. I just know that it's a fucking bizarre person to have talking to Congress apparently on behalf of the SEC. It's like their guy they brought in or something.
I do know this.
Way more consequential stuff that didn't make any news report.
I know we have 2 minutes left until we have to hard stop.
We do. That's true.
And I also know this. I know how I love you.
This is our 2 minutes. So we're all going to sing a song now.
No, you'll get kicked off or get a strike for.
No, that's just Clint.
Just
Wait, you can't sing songs?
He's saying,
I get
saying Highway to Hell, and she got
Yeah.
hit by a copyright strike for him just singing it.
Huh, that's weird.
That's interesting.
He was just,
Most of the public performance. That's why you got to stick to Trent Reznor songs, because from after he went independent, because they can't make you stop doing those, right? Because they're open.
Yeah, a buddy of mine owned a music venue once, and he had a conversation with a goon. And they are very, like, if you don't have the licensing and somebody sings a song in your venue that's a cover song, a punk band that comes in and does half of a Britney Spears cover, and you don't have a license to be allowed to do that, then you get screwed.
Doesn't wait, but if it's a metal singer and they're putting it to a heavy electric guitar, isn't that enough to make fair comment?
If you want to fight it in court, they got all the money, man. Yeah, let's get out of here. Let's roll this real quick. We got a new video from Rivet. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
Before you cut, I gotta say the music you're gonna hear is badass. My barber is the lead vocalist. The band called
6
Total
seconds.
Sham. Band is called Total Sham.
2 seconds. Total Sham.